Hello, and welcome to the Go There Do That podcast. My name is Ethan, and of course, I'm here with my wife, Heather, and we are here to reflect on some past events that we have experienced in the last month or so. We have taken a bit of a break from the podcast for this reason, and it is because last week we had a art show for Go There Do That, and we want to talk about it because it's very exciting. Heather, do you want to start with what you thought of how it went?
It was good.
All right. So it was good, and we sold.
Summary.
What?
In summary,
It was good, and that's what I say mostly too. To people when they ask, because I don't even know what to say, right?
Nowhere to start. Yeah.
And so we did sell 7 pieces so far, and it's still at the Conservatory of North Austin, and I guess that was my first ever solo art show to go to, and
Yeah. Same.
yeah, and so we do have. I didn't know what to expect. Like talking about it beforehand, it's like, hey, we have art that's going to go up on a wall, I think,
Right.
but we had a musician and a charcuterie board, and it was free wine, and then in the end we played a video in their theater. It's a very nice retirement community. And again, if you haven't heard, the reason this was their first one ever, so the reason we did it was the director, Joe Eckert, of the facility was asking for someone capable of doing a solo art show, and thankfully Heather and I represent.
Just crazy enough to do that. Yeah.
We represent one entity as 2 people, so we seem,
More. Yeah.
more. What is the word?
I don't know. Capable.
Organized?
More like we're more organized. Yeah.
The strength
But
of 2
it's-
people
Yeah.
into one thing, yeah. And so we did it. We pulled it off, and it went very well.
I think so. I was a little nervous, like the day before and like leading up on the day of how it is gonna play out. We got there at like 6 the night before the
right.
solo show, to hang up well, technically we hung up the 23 of the 26 pieces. 'Cause
Curating is the word.
yes. And so I had made a plan for like where the pieces would go, and like what section, and everything on the wall. But of course, when you get there, it doesn't always go exactly according to plan. But that's also a little bit on me because I am not great with like dimensions and stuff. So we changed a few things up, but we hung 23 pieces by ourselves, just me and you. So thinking about that as like a feat of like a marriage triumph. Imagine hanging 26 things on like your wall at home with your spouse.
23, yeah.
23, yeah. That's like
Took
a
us
whole feat in itself.
4 hours to.
It did, yeah.
Because we did have a measure there.
We got a nice system going, yeah.
If you look at our Instagram or Facebook, it will show how it is set up. I did take photos of it, and I mean, some were stacked on top and everything, but it looks pretty.
And they were organized by like category, like general landscape, wildlife, fall colors, Europe, Northern Lights. Oh, Smoosh has made his entrance of the podcast. That's our cat.
Yep.
But yeah, that was a lot of work, and so then I was kind of nervous because it was like 10 p.m. The night before, and we got all that set up, but it's like we're tired. We have people coming in from out of town, to like go home and kind of entertain and everything. So I was a little nervous at that point, but it all worked out just great.
Peachy.
Yeah.
Just fine. Yeah.
Something really special about it too is like, we sent out invitations. We, invited family and friends that were close to us, but it kind of was just like hey, like I'm sending this to you, but there's absolutely like no expectation for you to be there. Because yeah, it's not like, a wedding or like a baby shower, But then we wound up having way more people come from out of town than I like expected to, which was really cool.
Yes. It's what they mean by overwhelming support, I think.
Right, yeah. So that was really cool and special, and I think it made the event even, even better. Than, I mean, obviously it's very cool to have like a solo show in this place with strangers because you're getting to share your art with, people who might not have been exposed to that before. But it was also just like so special to have people there that have, supported us throughout this and throughout our lives, really. So I think that just made it all that much better.
And at the time of recording this episode, August 12th, I believe it's August 15th, that was our first time going camping together to a state park.
August 15th of 2020.
Yeah, 2020.
Yeah.
So less than 3 years ago,
Yeah.
we just were discovering whether or not we were compatible with camping together.
Yeah.
And so now and I did thankfully bring a camera with me and take photos, and somebody appreciates the photos I take, in the places you plan to go to and all that.
I think my favorite part of the art show too was like the video that you made to go along with it. Because like we have 26 pieces up in this art show. We had a lot of questions about whether they were paintings, which I think is a compliment. But then you showed the video in the theater, and it was basically like a highlight reel of our adventures, but you could also like see in video form these pieces that were up on display for the art show. So it just like connected the reality of it even more, because it's like not like a Google image or whatever. Like you see me in front of, the Death Valley Salt Flats, and like it's like we've been there and like experienced that, and this is like what we brought back to like share with others. And it was really cool how you like put that together.
Yes, that's actually what motivated me to make the video. It was that when we were hanging the photos, I had already had the song in my head picked out and everything, and obviously I was going to do things that were in the art show in the video, but I think the motivation was found once somebody asked me. They said, "What kind of acrylic paint do you use for these canvases?" And I said, "They're photographs. We saw these things." And then they said, "Oh, so when you bring them into Photoshop, do you do any, what kind of layering or composition do you do to make it look like this?" And I'm like, well, it actually happened this way.
It looked like that in real life.
Because I don't use Photoshop to edit photos. I only use an app called Lightroom. And you can do a lot of manipulation in Lightroom, but I only just adjust, lighting.
Shadows,
and
maybe.
Just a little bit, because some of the things that we have don't happen very long. And so, it, painted by the sun was a little underexposed, so you just bring that up a little. But
right.
That's basically all I do when editing.
Yeah.
And it's pretty
But I think that's
crazy.
cool too, because it's they are once in a lifetime photos, but also knowing that it's not AI generated or super manipulated in Photoshop. You can see this thing with your real eyeballs. There is a chance for you to see that.
Yeah. Just today I was looking into the Photoshop generative AI autofill feature, and you can circle something on the screen and say, "I want trees here." You literally type it in and it'll put trees there for you. And when you get on the Adobe website and they show the example of it, it literally says Northern Lights. If you want Northern Lights in the sky, you can type it in, and it will insert them in for you. And I was like, oh man,
That's
how do
kind
people believe it's real when
right.
this kind of thing is happening more? And it's
That's
like,
kind of sad, yeah. I
well,
mean, it's like crazy, like that's really
it
cool,
is
but
cool.
it's not like real. I think it's already so hard to like tell the difference in like the world we live in.
Hmm.
And by world, I mean like the virtual world, not like the actual real world that we live in.
Hmm.
I think it's already like so hard to tell what is real and what's not. And so that's kind of, it is cool, but it's a little disheartening too. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's that kind of brings me into
Oh, whoops.
this book I'm reading. I will just double check the author's name real quick, but it's the book is called Stolen Focus. It's by Johann. Let me see here.
Probably Johan.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Johann Hari, Hari, Johannhari. So say it however you want. It's by that guy.
Yeah.
But he basically is looking into this book. Is kind of addressing an issue that I've been thinking about like technology and the digital world and everything, and like how it's affecting us in ways that we aren't really realizing.
Yeah.
Because it is the virtual world affects our focus in ways that like you don't know because our brains haven't really evolved.
Yeah, we don't really have enough research yet, anyways,
yeah.
because like, yeah, it's not even like it's been around even since like we've been kids. Like
We are
grown into,
older
like,
than Google.
right.
You
Like
know?
that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like yeah, in elementary, I like learned how to use encyclopedias and stuff like that because it was like, well, that's what you're gonna have to use. And like really until I was in like high school, like internet research wasn't big, which is absolutely crazy to think about.
Calculators used to be a separate device from your phone. You sound like an old person when you talk, but like
Yeah.
you are not that old, right, in the grand scheme of things,
Yeah.
and how much things have changed in this very short amount of time. It's hard to keep up, and I think the trick is just making sure you're keeping up with yourself above all else, because with the fear of missing out, right, is
Yeah, FOMO.
that's what it is. A lot of people have that, and it's like, well, if I'm not up to date, I am not going to be like
Yeah.
relevant.
Yeah, if I haven't
know.
watched that show, then how do I talk to people? Yeah.
Well, there's so many shows and there's so many
Yeah,
different
you
options
can't keep
now.
up.
Yeah, and so then you reach this paralysis by analysis, and you're just sitting there like, what do I actually? What we used to ingest in 1980, we used to receive like 40 newspapers worth of information because of like television and stuff. In 2007, it was 140 newspapers worth, and now they're
yeah.
like, we have no idea.
Yeah.
So
It's probably that per day.
yes, and it's so much information that you're receiving. It's good to just be able to slow down because
Yeah.
your brain needs time to stop and reflect and connect experiences to your current experience now. And there's a quote from this book. This guy, he was a victim to it, right? He realized that he couldn't like focus anymore, and he
yeah.
took a 3-month like sabbatical without technology, and he was getting his news only from newspaper, and it caused him to like slow down. But
Yeah.
but he said, I was so tired that all I knew was how to outrun it. I was so tired that all I knew was how to outrun it. And that's like, you take melatonin to go to sleep, you wake up
Yeah.
and take coffee to wake up, and then you go through your day, you never really get as much sleep as
Yeah.
you
Like
should.
rested. Yeah.
I just, you don't realize the importance of sleep until you start dreaming again. And once you start dreaming and actually like listening to what that means, it's everybody hallucinates every night of their lives. They just don't know what it means. And like, I don't dream. You know how many people say that? Like
I mean, I haven't. I know that I do dream, but I haven't had a dream in like a really long time, other than like a panic dream, and it's always related to like when I'm like max stressed out.
yeah.
But I haven't had like just a normal like, oh, that was kind of fun or weird dream in forever.
Yeah. So I feel like this podcast, in a way, is an exercise for us to like slow down and actually like talk to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, we do talk off the air all the time.
Sometimes.
Well, all the time about things,
Yeah.
and this is why we started a podcast. We're like, why don't we just talk
It's not
about
an extra thing.
Yeah. But it is good to stop and think about like what you've done in your life, and a lot of people don't do that until their subconscious sort of forces them to, and that's kind of the idea of a
Well, I mean, you and I
know.
both have trouble slowing down.
yeah.
Like, even after the art show, it's like our first automatic thought is like, okay, now what?
Well, so
You know?
that's a testament to, again, in the book they studied people in flow states. So we're trying to decide, we're constantly choosing between two profound forces, and that is fragmentation and flow. So fragmentation is like you constantly are moving on to the next thing, and you're never like in deep focus. Like it takes on average 23 minutes to refocus your mind into a state of deep focus.
That's average. I feel like mine is worse.
Once you have a distraction, though.
Yeah.
And what is a distraction? And it's anything that takes your attention away from the current thing. And when I say a state of flow, that's when you lose yourself in the work you're doing, right? And that's like literally you're so focused, all other goals are put aside. You're not thinking about anything else except for that one
Could that
thing
be
you're doing.
considered a hyperfixation as well?
I mean, like, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're
it
not
would be-
focused on anything else, and
Yeah.
and you're enjoying it though.
Yeah.
And so whenever you said like we're on to the next thing, they studied painters, and how the process, like what is this that they do whenever they're in their work,
Yeah.
painting for hours and hours on end. Like how do you maintain that? And it's the process of painting is what absorbs them. But once they're done with a painting, they move that one aside, and then they want to go into the process again. And so reading is a form of that
Flow
state too, because you're immersed in the book. You're not thinking about anything else. But that's hard to like break. It's hard to break away from the distraction because you can hear them like scratching or feel them that's the way my brain works. Like it's like when Smoosh is scratching at a door.
Yeah,
and
literally, I was
wanting-
trying to like, I had started in the morning, and I was like, before I like get on my phone, before I eat breakfast, before I get my coffee, I was like, I'm gonna like sit down and like meditate, do some like mindfulness, and just like kind of focus in on like what I want the day to be and like something I'm going to be grateful for. And I like sit down and get started. I'm all zenned out, and then Smoosh is literally scratching on the door, and I'm like, how do I? I'm not quite that strong yet in like my practices of avoiding distraction because I could not ignore him.
And so being bored is like that's kind of like what meditation is. You're bored. You're not doing anything, and people think your time is wasted when you're not doing anything. But really, your brain
your brain craves that.
Yeah, they said the kid looking out the window in the classroom is using his brain the most effective way.
That was me.
Yeah. Because your mind is just
off on another planet. Yeah.
But so yeah, it's the process is what more, once you get to the peak, you're like of a mountain or something, you're like, well, take a photo and then go back, right? Like the process, the most rewarding part is the challenge of getting there, you know, because if it was just something like an instant gratification type of thing, which is sort of what I'm getting into with.
Do you think that's true for like everything? Because I'm thinking of like going to Europe, for example. Like I definitely enjoyed the process of like everything that led up to there, and I am the type of person that enjoys that process. Like I like in some cases I do like planning for something, not necessarily a trip, but I like planning for something and all the steps more than the thing. But then we're like in Europe, and that's like the culmination of it all. And so
Well, it's the same thing as the art show, right? That's very rewarding
Yeah.
for a day.
Right.
just
I
like
guess
Europe is
so.
rewarding for that
The
week.
time that you're
Yeah,
there.
like
Yeah.
you do reach a triumphant type of stage, and that's
Climax.
like
Yeah.
we're there. And yes, we should enjoy it because it was like, wow, we're here
So
now.
that would still be like a part of the process.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it's different, I guess, comparing it Europe to a painting. It's like when you finish the painting, you can stand there and look at it and
Yeah.
enjoy it, and that's like Europe.
Well, that's what you do with Go There Do That, because you
Yeah.
make sure we can still sit there and look at it and enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it is like a piece of art that we create from it. But when you are just seeking quicker rewards, which your brain is like, I'm perfectly fine with this, because we're not like in a survival mode, right? Like we're not hungry or anything. And that's like, what is your goal? Are you searching for a certain piece of information? And it's like, oh, I was just talking about these shoes and then they showed up. And it's like, oh, how rewarding. And so then you get them. But some people, I don't know, I think I'm getting off track. But the point is, the harder you work for things, like the more rewarding it is. And the longer the length of time, right? The more you dedicate yourself to something for a longer amount of time, the more rewarding it is. And I just have from personal experience, less than 3 years of us doing something, it has reached this one little wave, crest of a wave. And it's just one of them, but it feels so rewarding to be recognized for a lot of work that we've done in our lives. And plus, we didn't even apply for this art show. It was kind of forwarded by a friend to this guy, so our website was. Which is also really cool because the work starts to speak for itself in a way. Like I am just a representative, of what Go There Do That is turning into, or what it is, and that's very rewarding too to have something separate from me be recognized.
People ask that. People were asking that this weekend.
Yeah.
Like, why do you call it Go There Do That and not like Ethan and Heather?
Right.
And it's like, it is us, but it's like more than that. And it is like nice to have that like separation of like working towards something maybe even like greater than yourself, And I think that we're pretty great. It's not to say that, we're just, scum of the earth and this thing is better than us. It's just like feels like something bigger than us. And I like that it's like a separate entity that is also encapsulates us, but also encapsulates like so much more than us.
Yeah. And that is like really amazing that it has legs that it kind of stands on its own, right? I mean, we do have this podcast. We have like an art show running right now. We have a YouTube channel with videos and, we have...
Sometimes it doesn't feel real or possible. And people ask and it's like, I don't know, I just do it. Like, we're also working full time and like we work very hard at like our regular jobs. Like it's not like slacking off there so that this can like happen.
No.
Like we are just kind of crazy. And I think we're worse together.
Worse? Oh.
Worse crazy.
Yeah, you can call it crazy. You can just call it, dedicated, motivated, disciplined, whatever. Because, I mean, late night editing sessions can only be done late at night, after work.
But I also don't feel like we're like those people that are like, you gotta grind to do we definitely we took a month off of the podcast because we were like, this is too much right now. Like we do allow ourselves to like breathe and slow down and like play zombies.
Call of Duty.
Yeah, Call of Duty zombies and like have a nothing day. Like it's not like we never rest because I think that's just as important as everything else, all the days of work that you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we have a goal and we don't have a perfect shape to it, right? But as long as we like as long as it's
Just keep like
contributing,
kicking it forward.
yeah, it's contributing towards
Yeah.
this thing. And so anytime it's like a mission statement, and it literally is in the name, like go there, do that, and it's like,
Right.
well, what do we do next or whatever? And it's like, well, then let's go somewhere else and let's do something else, and that's why,
Right. Sometimes go there, do that
Yeah.
is going to Europe, and sometimes it's putting on an art show, and sometimes it's going camping for the weekend.
yeah,
Yeah. And sometimes it's taking care of things at home,
yeah,
you know? Yeah.
yeah. It's very rewarding, and I quite enjoy thinking about it. But when you set aside all your distractions, you begin to see what you were distracting yourself from, too. Because I don't know how many times we've talked about it, but like the reason it started was in
Yeah.
2020, 3 years
Yeah.
ago, and we were like, what are we doing? Like, we just kept asking ourselves, like, we're adults now with, we just hang out on the weekend and watch TV, or
Yeah.
I don't
Like, what
know.
am I supposed to do
like,
now?
what are you supposed to do
Yeah.
with your time? And I keep saying, like, you stumble into it, but it's good to, like, surprise yourself too. And there's I'm gonna get to the different stages of how to reach flow, because I think, like, first, to reach like a flow state, and this is just this guy named Mihaly, Mihaly.
I have to see it. Spelling, I can't imagine
You
a
can't
word
see
if it's
letters?
just...
Oh.
No.
Well, I'm gonna say Mihaly.
Okay.
But he's the one who studied the painters. And the first, to find your deep focus, into something, like, first you need a goal. Like, I want to paint a canvas. I want to run up this hill, and you have to set aside other goals to do it. And because it requires all your brain power towards like one mission. And number two is you have to do something meaningful. And that's like the basic truth of attention, and we've evolved to pay attention to meaningful things to us, right? Like, this is like what means something to you, for example. Go there, do that, right? And then
That's why I put effort into
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
And the third one is to do something at the edge of your abilities,
Like something difficult,
but
challenging.
not beyond them,
Yeah.
Like, you can't, that's a lot of times you set your goal way too high. Like,
Yeah.
if I were to say 3 years ago, I want to start an LLC,
Right.
and I want to have an art show, and I want to have a whole podcast with video, and I want to have this and that and whatever.
Yeah.
That's overwhelming, and that was beyond my abilities at the time.
Right.
And it's unattainable, because it's like, I can't do all those things at once. But
That's why I struggle with that.
Yeah.
Like perspective, and then I like stop myself in my tracks.
and so then you stop, and you're like, this is impossible,
Yeah.
because it's beyond your abilities. And so you have to kind of humble yourself sometimes and be like, I can't do that right now. Like,
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
But you also have to push yourself too. And so there's
Yeah.
that, like, balance, you have to always stay between, where it's like you're challenging yourself. Because if other people are challenging you, it doesn't feel as
I don't
nice.
like to be told what to do.
right.
It has
like-
to be from me.
Let me go at my own pace too.
Yeah.
And so when somebody's like, hey, I need you to do all these 1,500 impossible things by the end of the week, you're like, oh, you'll fire me if I don't. And so then that takes away meaning too, because it's like, then you start doubting yourself too.
For sure.
And you're like, I can't do these things.
I literally can't, yeah. And then sometimes you wind up doing it anyways, but it doesn't even feel like you're like proud of yourself. It's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, crazy.
And that's like a personality trait too, like agreeableness. Like, agreeable people, like,
Yeah.
easy to get along with, but also they tend to exert
I put too
themselves.
much on my
It's
plate.
like, yes, of course, and they light themselves on fire to keep others warm. you
Yeah,
know.
why do you think I'm not teaching anymore?
Oh,
Because
well,
that's how I am. Yeah.
teaching, yeah.
I get
So-
burned out.
Right, because I mean, to touch on teaching, like the the expectations of teachers
Yeah.
are wild.
Right.
And so that
Like I am a human.
Mm-hmm. And that leads to burnout quickly because it's like, what is our goal? Is this
But I'll try.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Is
Like
I will try.
The goal is to teach children. It's meaningful to teach children, but is it something that's beyond your abilities? Like, it has to reach those three.
It was so weird yesterday. So to give some context, I live in like a neighborhood that like my old school was zoned for.
Oh, yeah.
And so some of my students live in this neighborhood, and there is a family that lives literally on our street, and I taught two of them, so like brother and brother. And one of them has been like riding around the block and like kind of like just trying to like see if he'll see me, like catch me in passing. And it's like adorable, but yesterday he asked why I left teaching. And I'm glad you were out there because I was like so caught off guard by the question. I was just like, oh, how do I explain this to, I guess he's probably like 10 now, but yeah, how do I explain this to a 10-year-old? Like.
You remember what you said?
Not really. I think I like blacked out. I think I just said it was hard. And then, yeah.
Well,
and then he said, no, it's not.
And I said if she taught anymore, then she'd have a line of kids on their bikes outside of our house because he always comes by.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you have any more kids that you teach, they're always going to.
I won't get anything done.
Yeah, because we live,
Yeah. But, and then you said something about like, it's okay to like move on from something and yeah.
Oh, to change what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you're not a different person.
Yeah.
You're just getting a new experience.
And then I told him, I was like, if I would have stayed longer, I probably would have been like, because he is always like, you were such a nice, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, but if I would have stayed, I would have turned into something I didn't want to be.
Mm-hmm. Some kind of creature.
Yeah. Because
like
and that's not saying that people who stay in teaching turn into that, but like,
no.
I was just not doing well. Even though it looks like I'm doing well, because I sure will fight to make it look like I'm doing well no matter what. Yeah, but eventually it would have broke me, and I'm glad that I did that for myself before it was able to do that.
It's weird because traveling is like what we were doing while you were teaching somehow. But then that was probably.
But it's because it was my escape.
Yeah.
It was literally like it was helping. It prolonged my teaching life. Starting go there, do that.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. You've been working at a bar or something. What would you have done without like what's the move if you were?
I don't know. I either would have. I'm the kind of person that I really like can't.
You would have seen it through.
I would have had something lined up, and I was like working towards that, and like trying different things, but I wouldn't have left without security because I just like can't. Or I would have just like had a complete mental break and then been forced to leave.
That's always an option too.
No,
you could just.
I'm too strong for that, but yeah, I'm too stubborn for that.
Too stubborn to have a mental breakdown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
They say
I just would have kept working at something to like get out.
Oh.
Until it happened.
There's that quote when somebody says you can't handle the storm, and then you say, "I am the storm." Yeah, it's a cool quote.
That's me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, what were we talking about? Giving your all to things.
Giving your
and focus.
Your complete focus. Yeah. Like, what are you actually focused on? What are you actually determined to do? Like, what brings you meaning in your life? It can be anything. There's another book called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, the lady who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. She tells a story about this woman who was figure skating in school, and she loved it, and she never she never pursued it afterwards, but it was where she remembers her being like her happiest.
Yeah.
And so then she was like in her 40s or 50s, and she realized that she could just start figure skating again, and
not have to be like in the Olympics.
Yes. And so she was at this skating rink with like children around, but she literally ignored
was, like,
everything
lost in it,
because she was she found, and she just worked like a normal whatever job. Like you don't have to be a
Yeah.
like. Are you here to experience, or are you here to achieve? You
Right.
know?
But I think that's what's difficult is like as you grow up, you're kind of like
Mm-hmm.
expected to choose, like why would I have kept swimming
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not on the college swim team or going
Olympics.
to the
Yeah.
Olympics, Like why is that something that I would keep doing? Why would I keep, you know, playing drums and piano if I'm not like in band anymore or in piano lessons or like doing that for my major in
Mm-hmm.
college? Like you're kind of expected to like choose this path, but like I think it takes some time to figure out that you can do that in addition to like, it doesn't have to be your career,
Mm-hmm. This guy, Mahaley's brother, he would collect crystals. Like he would just go all around the world, and that was like his
Yeah, I love
passion.
getting rocks and
Yeah.
yeah.
But he said he was looking at a rock and staring at it, crystal,
Yeah.
and he was looking at all the edges and the way it shined off of different like light, and
Yeah,
so he was
really
just moving it
studying it.
around, and so he realized he thought that like his power was going out or something, but he realized that the sun was setting because he did that all
He was
day,
so
and he was like,
yeah.
"Oh, I was just doing this for 8 hours,"
Oh wow.
and he was just looking at his rocks all day.
Yeah.
But it was where he's his happiest,
Yeah.
and that is what.
But we're not allowed to look at rocks all day.
But I mean, so yeah, there is.
We got money to make.
Well, so yeah, this guy who wrote this book took a 3 month sabbatical, and it's
yeah.
like, how do you do that? And I was thinking,
Most
like, well,
people aren't privileged. to
well, he's
that,
a
yeah.
writer, and he had published
Yeah.
book. Like he worked hard to be
Yeah,
able to afford
be able
that
to, yeah.
opportunity, but not everyone can do that because
Yeah.
there are people who are just like not, what's the word? Just you feel paralyzed because you have
Of your circumstances.
look at your
yeah.
schedule, and it's
Right.
like
Where do you fit that in?
as soon as I get home, I'm exhausted and I just can only go to sleep.
Yeah.
And so that is
I've been there.
in order to
I used to come home from school in Fort Worth and at like 9
Yes.
at night and just like crash and like cry until I fell asleep.
when you worked at Fort Worth.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, not
And I like loved it too
Yeah.
at the same time. Like that was probably my favorite.
Oh yeah, you
But-
remember it being really great and awesome, and then I'm like, do you remember?
Because of the people I was working
Yeah.
with.
Do
My
you remember
team
the
was
picture
great.
you'd send me about your car being the only one in the parking lot, and it's
Right.
Like, so
Yeah.
whenever you think, how am I so overwhelmed? Like you were at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you're describing. So it, again, setting your goals too high to being like, well, I want to take a 3 month sabbatical. And it's
Right.
like, that is an unrealistic
Not
goal, though.
realistic
Because
right
if you
now.
do that, you will no longer make money or no longer be able to support your family.
Yeah.
So it starts with like incremental changes.
Mm-hmm.
Like do what you look around your area, your environment, and see what you can actually like change and make a difference to, right?
Yeah.
And some people say it starts with just making your bed every morning.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel better when my bed is made, or when my room is clean, or when my cables are more organized. And then you move up from there, and you say, well, now that my space, like at least when I come home, my space is like nice,
Right.
And
Yep.
if you don't have 5 minutes every day, then that's like probably clinically or chronically, I don't know, that everybody has 5 minutes, I would say, out of their day to like make a change.
But I've been where it feels like you don't.
Yes.
I've been where it's like everybody, you can,
Yes.
like everybody does have 5 minutes, but I've been in this mental state where it's like, no, I don't have 5 minutes. Like
So-
I don't have a second.
Can you
2 minutes.
describe how you like got out of that state?
I don't really know because it's like, I don't know if I could because that was just like 6 years ago. And so things are different now.
Well,
And it was it was like 1,000 steps.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It takes a
Yeah.
lot of time. That's why I'm saying cleaning, whatever. Like
Yeah, that's
those
true.
little steps. That was 6 years, right? And now you're sitting
Well,
where you are now.
I guess like the first change I made was me coming home at 9 p.m., but it wasn't directly from school. It was like that I went to go work out after school.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I was getting home that late. So that was like a small change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And something this dude realized too, Johan, he had said he was 3 months away from all social media and email, and he came back to check it, and he thought he would have
thousands of notifications.
Yeah, he would spend 30 minutes a day checking emails, and he was
Yeah.
like, I have like 45 hours of emails worth of checking. He's like, oh no. And he was like, oh, it took me like 2 hours to look through everything. And then he checked his social media. His followers were the same, but like the world was still spinning. And he was like,
Right.
oh, I was worrying about this. Like, oh, I have to keep going and keep checking. But the world is just like, it's kind of comforting to know that
it will keep going.
It's a little
without
indifferent
you, yeah.
about you taking time to yourself, right? Like,
right.
the obligations you have maybe aren't exactly
right. Like even us not recording a podcast for a month. Like, was it the end of the world? Did anyone really notice? Maybe my mom probably.
We're sorry.
But it's like
Sorry,
the
Cheryl.
world kept going, even though we needed to take some time away from that. You know.
Yeah, because that's what we like. I try to, even now, I'm trying to stay very like conscious and aware of when I'm like losing myself into something that I don't truly care about. It's just because I don't want to worry about something else that's like overwhelming or something that I'm worried about, and I have a hard time now like hiding from feelings that I have too. Because I mean, just last night I had like something that was from my subconscious like scratching at the surface, and I was like, I don't know what this is, but I need to go and let it like kind of let it draw out. And so I go on these walks, and just kind of let it surface. And that's the part of like the being bored way of thinking, where you're like your mind wandering is literally connecting all these
thoughts that you're not
experiences,
always able
and
to,
it's like I'm gonna make sense of this, but your brain does a lot of work obviously for you that you don't know how to control. Like I'm not telling it to beat my heart or breathe or anything, but I think a lot of people want as much control as they can over their lives because they feel like it's so just spread out. And I've felt that, butter spread over too much bread, you just feel thin.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I don't have enough for all of this.
Yeah.
And so you start to look at like, what can I cut the crust off of this bread? Like, does it have to be this big? Does my life have to be this like busy? Or because a lot of people are told this is what you should be worrying about, right?
Yeah.
And you listen to those things all the time because how am I supposed to know?
Why wouldn't you? Yeah.
Right? How am I supposed to know what I'm supposed to worry about if nobody tells me?
Yeah.
But then I kind of decide what to worry about and what not to. By worry about, I mean like goals, or how to spend my time. And so I've been, just the other day, I was talking to somebody about migraines. And I've had 2 of them in my life. And when I had those 2, it was because of stress, but I was way less busy back then than I am now. But I wasn't listening to myself as much, and I think that's when your brain kind of does an extreme measure, like when you're so stressed out or a thing, it's like literally just a Control-Alt-Delete or like a factory reset.
Yeah.
Your body does it. You have a physical reaction to stress. That's when you're like, uh-oh, it's gone too far.
Right.
Because you're so tired, that's all you know. All you know is how to run away from it. Like, and eventually you're going to get so tired you can't keep running, and it's going to catch up.
Yeah.
And then you're 35 years old and you go buy a motorcycle, which is what I would do probably if I were to.
I think that's what
midlife
your
crisis
path
or
is
something.
Probably, yeah.
That's like the stereotypical midlife crisis thing, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Well, Carl Jung says at 35 years you reach a significant, like, kind of crossroads. It's like your midlife, literally, just about on average. So that's where I got that age from.
Yeah.
Carl Jung didn't say anything about motorcycles, but and who is Carl Jung? He is Swiss, what?
Well, I just got mad.
Oh, okay.
Well, because at first you said that 35 and midlife, and I was like, that's not really midlife. And then I was like, well, yeah, like average age is like 70-ish.
I mean, yeah, I
You
guess.
know, I think it's like growing, but
Oh,
for the
yeah.
most part, yes. And so technically, yeah, that is midlife. But then you have to like retirement age is like now like 70.
Raise it
And
up.
so then that made me like mad.
Didn't they raise the retirement of teachers?
Yeah, well, yeah, they made it to where you have to, the number of years that you're working and your age has to add up to like 90.
That's a lot. So,
And even then, like, you're not, because technically, if I would have stayed in teaching, I could have probably retired at like technically, like 58 or something. But
that's not bad.
you can't really.
Oh, like as in
Because
income?
that amount that you're making at that point is not going to, because you do like possibly live to be like 80. So like that amount with like the way that things rise and rise and rise, I couldn't live off of that for the next like 30 years.
And if you're a teacher, that's not to say that your job isn't fulfilling or anything, right? Like it's just saying
There's a lot of things I miss about
right.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, there are wonderful things about teaching, and
Yeah.
we were there are very
There's things
yeah.
that I'm missing from like that.
Well, you
now.
said that yesterday too. Yeah, you were like, "Man, I miss teaching." Yeah, like you were talking about all this, and it's like there are beautiful, wonderful things about it too.
Absolutely.
You
But
just
that's about most things in life.
well, yeah. There's
Yeah.
always a positive. There's always a flip side. I mean, I don't know if we're being too negative, but
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw that out there.
But to go back to like what you're talking about, like feeling like you don't have like control and stuff. But like I've been reading a book too. But it's about like the givens of life or whatever. And one of the givens, meaning like something that just is that you don't really have control over like the world. The only thing that you have control over is like you. But you don't have control over like other people. You don't have control over, the earth. You don't have control over a lot of things in your life, but it feels like you're supposed to. And then that like messes with you and makes you feel very unhappy. And I've been there because when you feel out of control, it is so hard to like keep going. And yeah, it makes you just want to like push back in like an extreme way and just like quit your job and, move somewhere else with like no plan or, like you're like, if I don't have control, then I just will take it all. I'm going to take all the control back then. But you have to like recognize that like you don't have control and but then you have to like be okay with that. Which that's like probably the hardest given of those like 5 givens that like for me, because I do like to have control and like I do not like to feel like I'm not in control because it's scary.
Yeah. Only worry about what you have control of. If you feel like you have no control, then I guess you have nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
Your book, The 5 Things We Cannot Change. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's what it is. Yes. That is a very interesting thought.
By like, I think it's like David Rico.
I like this quote from that.
You
book.
wrote down one of my book quotes?
Yes, that's what I have. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
But
feels
it's
special.
an action doesn't lead to a feeling unless a belief intervenes. What does that mean?
An action doesn't lead to a feeling unless a belief intervenes. So in that part, it was talking about feelings, and that whole chapter was like hard for me because I struggle with like feelings. Like I definitely like shut them out. And sometimes they bubble up into their surface. Like I can feel my eyes like trying to water up right now, even because it's like they do like leak out sometimes. But anyways, that part is talking about like taking responsibility for your feelings, because I think that we have like a tendency, I know I do, of being like, this person made me feel this way, you know, and that's like what builds like resentment and, you know.
That's bad, resentment.
Right. But that statement of saying like, this feeling cannot come just from this action unless like your belief intervenes. So like your past experiences with it, your thoughts, your belief is what is like, they're working together. There was another thing too, and it was talking about how like you can't have one without the other, like rubbing two sticks together make the fire. You can't blame it on one of the sticks.
Ooh.
So that being like the action and the belief, like
That's good, yeah.
you're feeling that way because of what they did and because of your own personal biases and experiences that have like created that feeling in you.
Takes two to argue, huh?
Right. And so that was, yeah, kind of like eye-opening, because I get like I can be sensitive sometimes and like get my feelings hurt. And you can sometimes be like, to me, like it feels rude to me, but it's because it's like stirring up something in me that's like been hurt before or is like afraid of that feeling. So yeah, that part was interesting because like you doing something isn't the only thing that's like causing me to feel that way. And that's not to give like a gaslighter any power over you and like somebody being like, you're only feeling that way because like that's your choice and blah blah blah. Like an action does lead to a feeling, but not by itself. So, you know,
Comes from somewhere.
you can't like throw it all to the wind and be like, well, my actions don't have consequences and don't make anybody sad or upset or angry because that's on them, you know? So I like that it kind of like addressed that they do work together.
Yeah, like, oh, when people say, I'm a-hole, right? Well, I just, since
Just say it.
we get a lot of comments on YouTube from
Oh, my old children, my old students, that's true.
I'll say a-hole. When people just say, well,
Yeah.
I'm just an a-hole.
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, sure. But like, what's the reason behind that? Like, what is the, I mean,
That's just who I am.
you have a different goal in life, sure. But like, the hurt people,
people,
you
yeah.
know? And so it's like, if you're constantly like, out, it's like, obviously they have something within them. That's what
hurting,
projection is, right?
Yeah.
Like the things they don't like about themselves, they see in other people, and then they point those things out, you know? And
For sure.
and that's what, because you don't, that's like the pseudoscience term called the law of attraction. And it's like where manifesting comes from and all that. Like when you start to really think about something over and over again in your head, and it's kind of like meditation too, like everything's the same, you know, but when you start to say, I really want this, I want this, I want this, and you start to like talk about it more and more and more, and then people are like, hey, do you want a solo art show? Which is what I was like parading around. I was like, what does it take to do a solo art show?
Yeah.
What does it mean to do that? I was just like wondering, because I was like, would that be cool?
Yep.
And then somebody was like, hey, I heard you wanted a solo art show.
Yeah.
And I sent it to this guy.
Like it absolutely would not have happened that way if you hadn't have been, if it hadn't been on your mind.
Yeah. But there's like that thing where you start to think of a yellow Jeep and then you start to see yellow Jeeps everywhere. That is like what you put your mind to is what your mind is like, okay, that's what we're focused on. Like, okay, let's
that's so true.
do that then.
So then if you're like,
I hate
the
this.
world is burning around me and everything is terrible, then that's what your mind is going to focus on. For sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's easy to mistake your own like suffering and for like, you relate that to the entire human species too. It's like, well, my life sucks. And then it's like, well, the entire world is also ending and burning too. Because I am guilty of that too. Like browsing certain subreddits, and you're just like, what is happening right now? Like, is this real? And it's because you're being attracted to the bad news, right?
Right.
Because everything in the world is happening at the same time, and we
Yeah.
have unlimited access to
I've been
it.
trying to shift my algorithm. So like I won't even stop, and maybe that's like
Oh.
ignorance, but I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
Don't want to know.
I have a hard time being on social media at all. I try to use it, like
Yeah.
just, but
It's hard. Like I
yeah.
think if we didn't have go there do that, I think I would like delete it all.
Yeah, I mean, I just re-downloaded Facebook for the art show stuff and like
Yeah.
posting things, and then I'm like, oh, Facebook's back on my phone.
It's just hard, and it's not
yeah.
even like it's not me like hating on the apps and stuff. It just like it like does feel like it like hurts me in particular, and I'm not saying that it hurts everyone or whatever, but like I can feel when I'm like chronically on it, and it makes me feel like not good.
I don't like the person I become when I'm on social media all the time.
Yeah.
The medium is the message,
Yeah.
as they say. Yeah, and there's another quote though that I want you to talk about. I feel lonely means when I'm lonely, I feel.
Oh yeah, because there was a part where it was talking about how basically, which is so helpful to me because even like a couple of years ago, I was like in therapy, and we got to the point where it's like, okay, talk about your feelings, and I was just like, what? I don't have those. No. But like I don't even like I have trouble identifying my feelings. I have trouble knowing what I'm feeling in the moment. Like I mean, I shut these things down, and like people that like know me personally do like recognize that in me, where like I've been described as like very stoic and like fun but like serious, and like sometimes I can be described as like scary because I just like don't show my emotions. Anyways, all that to say, it like was very helpful in the book because it basically broke them down to like 4 feelings.
Oh yeah.
Just like safe, sadness, anger, fear, and exuberance. Like happiness. But that wouldn't be as good of an acronym.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, that's like so much better for me to think about, because that's what I get stuck on is I'm like, I don't know what I feel. I feel like a little bit disappointed, a little bit this, a little, and all that. So basically all of those feelings are like a mixture of those 4, so you can kind of, it's going to help. I'm not saying that everybody needs to do that, but it's already helped me a lot to just be like, what are you feeling right now? Out of these 4, and they can intermingle, because most of the time you're not feeling just one isolated. But anyways.
The way, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, the way you described it, it's like painting, like the primary colors.
Right.
And then they mix together.
Yes.
And so jealousy was like anger and fear or something.
Right.
Mixed
in.
Like, so you can kind of, off those 4, you can just trace it back to I'm scared, I'm angry, I'm sad, or I'm happy. And it sucks that there's only one good one. Exuberance.
Well, but it also talked about how like they're not, none of them are really negative in themselves.
Oh, right. Well, because they're all feeling, yes.
Because they're just like feelings, like they're meant to come up and go away. Like they just are supposed to like flow through you. Like it's not bad to feel angry, but of course we've been like taught that feeling, like that's why I repress all my emotions, because it's like, well, I'm not supposed to be sad. I'm not supposed to be an angry little girl. I'm not supposed to show this. I'm only supposed to show exuberance because that's the only one that anyone wants to see. And so you hold them all in. But none of them are bad. They just are. Like they're just feelings. Feelings can be bad.
It's perfectly natural.
They're natural.
Like melancholy is one that I like. You can. That's, I think that's sadness and happiness at the same time. Like.
Sorry, I just.
Pardon that.
Yeah,
whatever
I'm sure that
was
very loud, but I just kicked my microphone basically.
Yeah, she's exuberant. Melancholy is like happy it happened, but sad it's gone type of
Yes,
thing, right?
yeah.
So you're like, I'm grateful, but also it sucks that this
But
is
it's
no
a
longer around,
right. And you have like some grieving in there, yeah.
Yeah, so,
Absolutely.
but mixtures.
Yeah.
Um,
What was the original question? Oh,
I'm
yeah.
I'm lone. I feel that I'm lonely, but when I'm
Yeah.
lonely, I feel.
So then it went on to talk about like some things that like feelings are not. Like feelings are not a belief. Like so saying like I feel that this person is the best candidate for the job. Like that's not an actual feeling, that's a belief, right? And so and it also said like some emotional states are not necessarily like fitting in those feeling categories like loneliness. And so instead of saying I feel lonely, because that's not it's
It's a
saying that that's
state
not
of
it's a state, yeah,
mind.
right, because a feeling is gonna flow through you,
Oh yeah.
but like you can loneliness is like a state, like you might be feeling that way for a while, right? It's not something that necessarily flows through you. So it was saying instead of saying I feel lonely, you can help yourself identify like where that's coming from by saying I feel lonely. Wait, what did it say?
I feel lonely.
What does
But
it say?
I'm gonna go back. Okay.
I feel lonely because or something.
Sorry. One moment.
Or
This is embarrassing. I thought I
I
wouldn't
took
have to have it
advantage
out
of
again.
you just having your notebook open over there.
Yeah, well, I was gonna get to something else soon, and then I feel lonely means when I'm lonely, I feel.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
When I'm lonely, I feel, and likely that's like you're feeling sad, you're probably feeling fearful because you might be afraid of
Being lonely
being
forever.
lonely, yeah,
Yeah.
being alone forever, And so, yeah, that I don't know. For me that helps like break it down, especially for someone who is like feeling illiterate basically. I can recognize them so well in other people, and like I do have a great amount of like empathy, but taking that for myself is hard.
Comes at a cost,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah. What's the difference between? Wait, okay. I'll ask you. What is a belief? You know, when an action isn't followed by a feeling unless a belief intervenes. Like, what is that? What is the belief? Like, it's a preconceived,
Something that you think.
based on past experiences that you've had.
Right.
That is your belief.
Right.
In this moment of seeing this action or experiencing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, I feel this way because, like, I don't know if you've gotten bit by a dog before. Is that a good example? Right. I'm scared now because of this dog, and it's a nice dog, but, it's not the same one that bit you.
Right.
But I believe that all dogs are bad now because when I was younger, I was bit by a dog.
Yep.
And so that's a belief,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cool. What's the difference, do you think, between loneliness and solitude?
Well, I would say that solitude is usually like your choice.
It's voluntary.
Yeah. Or it feels that way at least. So it might just be a difference of like how you're feeling about it, because typically if you're just like looking for solitude, it's something that you're like choosing and wanting, but typically like lonely is thought of as like something that you don't want. It's just happening to you. But it's not like your choice, is like how that would be perceived, I think. What about you?
Yeah, solitude is just like, I'm going to go for a walk, right? And I need to be alone with myself.
I enjoy solitude.
Yeah, it's
and
nice.
I do appreciate, I think that that's something that like I've always enjoyed because I'm an only child. And so, yeah, it's like something I've practiced my whole life. And then I think more recently, you've like learned to like solitude, which sometimes has like freaked me out because I'm like, what's wrong?
Oh, yeah.
Like he doesn't want to be around me anymore. Like this is strange behavior for Ethan. But I think I am learning to like appreciate that we both enjoy solitude now, because it is nice to have like your alone time
Yeah.
without anyone else's like thoughts and judgments and, you know,
It's perfectly
in the
healthy
mix.
to like, because only you know what's going on inside of your brain. You're the only one that can deconstruct what's happening. And so it's good. Like yesterday, I went for a walk and then I was able to come back and like summarize everything. And I was like, this is what what was going on. Because whenever
But you couldn't do that with me.
yeah.
Like, it wasn't working.
Yeah. I was just like, I don't know. Like, just let
Yeah.
me go, go
Yeah.
out and,
And sometimes you can, you know, sometimes it's a thing that's not so complex
yeah.
that you can work through together. Absolutely. But sometimes like you do have to figure it out by yourself.
Well, there's a lot been going on, like so much.
What?
Yeah. And so, like, that's, I think, a part of slowing down, too. Like, a good walk is, it's, it's, uh, it's underappreciated, maybe. It was for me, I guess. Like, just walking around, being by yourself, not having any real goal of what it's like. Oh, I got 15 minutes, like,
Yeah.
I gotta hurry up, speed walk back and forth. Like, I'm gonna go to this post and back home. And it's like, no, I just go until I'm like drumming up this, or I'll go run, too. And that like helps.
Yeah.
Because running is like a state of flow too, because you aren't working out, it's like no other thing. What else are you worried about while you're hurting?
Yeah.
Running
In
and
another
stuff.
life, I learned to love running.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a life next month. I don't know, but I hate running.
Yeah, it's terrible. But it's just a challenge. It's pushing yourself, right? Like,
I guess so, yeah.
but humans can only produce like humans can only produce one or two thoughts at once, and after that, you need to start writing them down.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think what a lot of people, the term multitasking, I'll never use when talking about a person ever again, because that term was coined in the 1960s when we invented processors for computers that could run more than one task at once. And so, for some reason, we attribute the term that we assign to machines to ourselves, and we're like, "Oh, I'm good at multitasking." That's in job applications, right? Must be a multitasker. And it's like, "Oh, so you don't want me to focus on anything?"
Right.
Because
you just want me to halfway do everything.
Truly, we can only do one thing, focus on one thing at once. And so, whenever you're going from one task to the other, like, what comes to mind? Like, whenever, like, let's say a mother holding a child, cooking this, that, whatever, like, just an example, there's a mother out there that does multiple things.
Everything, yeah.
But it's called juggling tasks, right? But you're not actually, your brain is literally
But that's different than multitasking.
Multitasking doesn't exist you can't do, how many hands,
Yeah.
you have to write something down, and then you have to move over here, and you're switching. And so that is called the switch cost effect. When, like, let me see here. Like, say you're doing taxes, and your brain has to, and then you go look at your text, right? And then you go back to looking at taxes. Your brain has to reconfigure when it goes from one task to the other, because you're cognitively, it's like complicated.
Yeah.
For your brain to be like, oh, so we're thinking about what this person, the response for this person. So you're like, it's like, okay, I will forget about all those numbers that you were just doing. And then you come back seconds later, and it's like, oh, okay.
It's a totally different process.
We're back to this now, and now I have to focus on numbers. And I was just sending a meme to a friend, and it was funny, right? Like, your brain is just like, what are we doing? But it, like, your motor skills are totally different when texting versus doing something else. And so constantly switching has a cost to it.
Yeah.
And that is where the fragmentation comes in of our minds. And so...
So what's the solution?
Oh, well, so it's kind of depressing.
Okay, perfect.
Well, because it only took one guy to work 7 days a week straight, and then everybody else was like, he is way more efficient than all of us. Why aren't we doing what he does? And so then as a society, that's kind of, obviously there's the Industrial Revolution and all that stuff. But there was a reason for, and now I'm not advocating for any certain type of something, but there is a reason for the Sabbath in religious circles, because not working for one day gives you time to, not working for one day gives you time to slow down
Reset, yeah.
and reset. And it's like, but now it's the always going. And that's why we feel like we don't have time for anything, because it's like, when do you slow down? Like, when do you have time for yourself? It's like, well, I work 24 hours a day. So never,
Yeah.
like teaching, you're talking about, like, when we had a weekend of time, and it's like, well, I want to, like, do we go do entertaining things, like go to the movies, or do we
Do we go camping? Do
do
I
our
clean the
taxes?
house? Do I,
Right.
yeah.
What
Yeah.
what are we sacrificing when we're putting all our time into this one thing that feels draining to us? It's sacrificing a lot. So, yeah, again, I haven't finished the book yet, but
Okay.
there's once you're switching constantly, there's like a screw up effect that you can get into too, because you start to make more mistakes because you aren't able to really
Absolutely.
focus in on that, right? You're like, oh, I missed the number on my taxes because I was
When I have too
over
many
here.
plates in the air, one of them is going to fall and crash. Yep.
Yeah,
I've seen that time and time and again. And it feels devastating.
yeah. And so then,
Because it's like, oh, I'm not a machine.
yeah, your thinking becomes like a little superficial, because you're
Yeah, because you can't.
yeah,
think
and you
deeper.
are now backtracking and correcting errors too, so that's more of your time, right? Because I wasn't focused on this, like, oh, I have to redo this entire thing. I've was guilty of that, like editing videos. It takes so long to like export sometimes, and I miss a letter, and I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
oh, I have to go back, and if
Do
I would
this
have just
whole- yeah.
taken the time
Yeah.
to look at this, like little mistake,
But it feels like you don't have time.
it feels like I don't have time.
Yeah.
And then it starts to drain your creativity, because where do your thoughts and innovation actually come from? And it's
Yeah, it's solitude. It's quiet. In those quiet moments, that's when ideas are spurred.
yes,
Not when you're constantly juggling 1,000 things.
yes. So when you're like not with no distractions, your brain is okay. We're gonna start making connections, and we're gonna look back at all of our experiences, and that's it's called PET scans in our
PET
brain.
scans.
Yeah. So that was like a crazy discovery, because it's like, what are our brains doing when we're not doing anything? It used to think it was like idle. But actually, in reality, our brain is working in a different area though, but it's like subconsciously. But they saw like activity in the brain when somebody's just like, oh, do, but your brain is like working still because you're awake. But a lot of scientists are like, well, if you're not doing anything, your brain's not active.
Like turns off.
Yes, but
No,
some of the
there's
best ideas.
Mine sure doesn't.
Yeah, some of the best ideas
I
come
don't think
from that.
I don't think my brain has ever turned off.
And then you go into like a diminished memory effect too. Let's see here. In UCLA, a study had people do two tasks at once, and they had another group of people do one thing at once, and the people who did one thing performed better, because you're like you remember things more too. It's like, what did you do during these 500 tasks that you did? It's like, I don't remember any of them actually. It's like, what did you do when you focused on this one thing? It's like, oh, it was wonderful. I remember everything about it, this process, because I was fully focused on it. But and it also takes like a lot of mental energy to convert experiences into actual memories too. And so not having time for that, like when sleeping and stuff,
Yeah.
is dangerous. But I think what I try to do is, not knowing that you don't have time for everything, right? Once you accept that, then you can say, well, what can wait until maybe tomorrow, because this is more important. Like me wanting to journal about my day, right? Like this, other thing. I don't have to edit this video today, or
Yeah.
like I don't have to do that today. But making sure that you put something aside for this other, like prioritizing, I guess,
Yeah.
is a very important way to like force yourself to have time for stuff.
Yeah.
Because once you accept you can't do everything at once and it affects you, like how do you make sure you like zone in on something, and it's like pushing other goals aside for now. The world won't explode, right? But you still have to do it later. But you have a couple weeks until that's due, and that's not procrastinating. That's just like systemically going down all your list of priorities and stuff. But yeah, journaling is kind of like a cherry on top type of thing, I guess. Sometimes.
Well, I always remember things better if I've written it down too. Like,
Yeah.
if I've like pretty much any time that I've studied in my entire life, like if I just read about it, like it is not staying.
Mm-hmm.
But if I write it down too, then it is going to stay longer.
Yeah. Yeah. The fastest rising cause of death is distracted driving from electronic use too. So that's what all these people moving to Austin.
I'm lucky that
know?
like
Oh my
I
gosh, yeah.
had an accident like
Oh wait.
well
What?
like when I was like young, like literally like I had my very first car. I was 18 and I'd had it for like 2 weeks. And I was texting and driving and I hit somebody, and the accident was not like, it was not a bad accident. I did not hurt anyone. I didn't hurt myself. I totaled my car because it was like older. But I'm actually like glad that that happened like so early on because
Scared you straight.
Exactly. Like
You are very good about that. Yeah.
yes, like I do not look at my phone while I'm driving.
Yeah. That's gotten me to be better about it too.
I know, because
Yeah.
it drives me nuts when people do that. Because it is, I'm like, you don't care about me. If you are doing this in the car, like it really does bother me. If you're like on your phone and you're driving, I don't care how like good you are at it.
Oh.
Like it bugs me.
Well, because you're not focused on
No, and I'm like, I know
driving this
yeah,
machine
exactly.
that could kill people.
Yeah, like it takes a freaking second. Like
Yeah.
I've been in a lot of near accidents, and the only reason that I was able to avoid it, and most of the time it's somebody else, but the only reason that I'm able to avoid it is because I'm paying attention.
That's true. Yeah.
So like if I was looking down at my phone for a second, even if it wasn't my fault, that doesn't, like, fate doesn't care if it's your fault, or like you can still get super hurt.
Yeah.
You know, and so yeah, I don't know. That just really bugs me. Obviously.
I just assume everybody on the road's trying to kill me.
Yeah.
You know, like that blinker doesn't mean
That's why I do
anything.
not trust I don't trust blinkers, and I don't trust not having a blinker on either.
Well, there's those people who set the blinker on the whole, like, as
Yeah.
they're driving forever, and it's
Yeah.
just like, you're going to turn right, aren't you? And you want to pull out in front of them, and they just speed by, and it's like, your blinker's on, though. Like, you just
Yeah.
passed the turn.
Yeah.
So, yeah, distracted driving is a crazy
It's
thing.
scary. Like, and you can see it. Like, yeah.
Yeah. So,
And it's not even, what's crazy is like sometimes it doesn't even, I've seen certain situations where it's like, I don't even think they were on their phone. They're just like so distracted in their brain that they're not paying attention.
yep.
Anyways, this episode is probably like pretty long, so we might want to.
Oh, are we done?
Up.
Okay. Yeah, we can
I
stop
think
there.
so. It's probably, yeah.
Well, let's end it on a positive note. Like, what is the solution? You can't change the world all at once, obviously, right? But you can nudge things in the right direction. And if you want to make a significant change in the world, you start with those around you, right? And or you can start with yourself too. Like,
That can make a huge impact.
You know yourself better than anybody, I think.
If you let yourself, yeah.
Right. And that is a wonderful thing. I just want to say that I'm very proud of us for maintaining this goal for almost 3 years now. And we have achieved a lot because we found meaning in our lives. And I hope that anyone listening finds that meaning if you haven't already. Go there, do that, you know?
Yeah. It means more than just Heather and Ethan.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks so much. We will see you next time. We'll try to be uploading weekly. Thanks to everybody who showed up to the art show. More names than I can actually remember right now because there were so many people. But thanks to everybody. You know who you are. We're going to make a post soon.
And I'm going to write thank you cards.
And we're going to write thank you cards. So, it's more personal than, you don't have to listen to this podcast to know our appreciation. So, but thanks so much, guys. We will see you next time.